Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Plutov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
When waning, and he was the sixth patriarch in China, when waning saw Nan Yui approach, he asked him, "Whence comest thou?" It is, like I ask you, where do you come from? And this little monk says, "I come from Tongshan." And so this waning then asks him, "What is it that thus cometh?" What is it that thus cometh? For more than the past 50 years, the Zen tradition has been quietly, sometimes not so quietly, moving from Japan to America and to Europe. Moved into Europe, I think, more rapidly than here. During the 60s, it was that the flower children opened their arms and took upon themselves the Eastern traditions, regretfully not always under good supervision. Many people frown upon the invading traditions, this meeting of the East and the West. Others allowed it, they read about it and, somewhat, and they allowed it to somewhat open their minds. Some people turned their backs on it altogether because of the subculture interest. There were those who perceived what was in some of these traditions, and they pursued them. So we do have some centers here. The subculture that started in the 60s is more than beginning to subside. It's been more than 20 years. And the pendulum swings again, as it always does, and the clean-cut American hero is back in the picture. I mean, now the hair is cut, and the nails are clean, and so on. Hopefully, the doors to the Zen tradition will not be closed again with this new scene in which we find ourselves. For our minds have been opened, and we perceive that there is much to learn. The Zen schools existing today in America are mostly of the Soto sect or the Rinzai sect. But within these two traditions, there is woven different methods, and these different methods of drawing out were developed by outstanding teachers in China and in Japan, and I'm going to talk about one a little bit. First, let us understand that the word Zen is a mispronunciation of the Chinese word Chang. And the Chinese word Chang is a mispronunciation of the Sanskrit word jhana. Jhana simply means meditation. So Zen is meditation. The tradition is built on meditation, and it has as its floor, the ground, meditation. And there are steps, or we could call them stages, in our progress to a realization of a state of unity with the Absolute that is attained, that we arrive at through this meditation. And this unity with the Absolute is the main purpose of meditation, although it has many other benefits. Now, in all of the traditions all over the world, there is this practice of truthfulness, of non-stealing, of non-killing, of cleanliness. It's a moral training. And in Buddhism, it is called the precepts by which a monk lives or a lay student lives as he's beginning to learn what lies behind the precepts. And we presume that most people that we talk to have this moral training already under the belt, as the saying goes. We're clean and good-looking, and behave ourselves, and right? Sure. So I'm going to start a little bit talking about what to do with this floor. So where do you start? You just begin somewhere down the line to sound appealing that, yes, you would like to find out something about what is it that thus cometh. So how do you start? Well, you start with yourself. There isn't any other place to start. You start with yourself. And to begin with, what you do simply is sit down. You sit down. And there is the position in which to sit, and it varies. Monks usually sit on a mat or on a cushion, depending at the temple. Women will sit on a bench, which is the Chinese style, or you can sit in a chair. There are all kinds of ways. But this tailor fashion, sitting on a mat, sitting on a cushion, this gives, because it makes a triangle, it gives a tremendous solidity to your sitting. It's called an asana. It's a posture, And this because you feel so solid with it, it allows you gradually to relax into yourself and to be this solid along now with this body, so that you're not wobbly. Above all, don't be wobbly. And then to begin with, where you're looking for yourself, you look at your breathing. Breathing. Breathing we do all the time. What's so new about that? Zorbas, the Greek, says we breathe as long as we're here. That's life. Usually we don't, unless something is brought to our attention, we don't realize how precious this breath is. nor what the breath is. Now as we sit, breathing and observing it, it's going to become something very special. And we're going to make some sense out of this little phrase in Genesis, and God breathed into Adam's nostrils, and he became a living soul. A living soul. Observing your breath will teach you much about yourself. Then comes another step of observing what comes and what goes in the mind. What comes and what goes. And when we say mind, in this instance, I'm including the emotions. What comes and what goes. And through this observation, one learns to disidentify oneself with all that is not necessary. And you will be surprised at what is not necessary. In this observation of what comes and what goes, we learn not to allow the mind to act like a drunken monkey, which is, it's wild and it's jumping around. You get excited and you watch this monkey jump from one branch to another, yeah. And then after we have done this for a while, 5 minutes? Yeah. This next step then is called dharana. It is learning the ability to hold a point of concentration. To hold a focus without wobbling. And then finally there comes this step of jhana, which is meditation. And it comes about through the ability to concentrate. And all these steps lead up to it. And the final step finally is called samadhi, which we're not concerned with this samadhi, and we don't need to speculate about it. We could call it a supra meditation. Huh? And why speculate about it before we have learned to meditate? So, now, once upon a time, there was a minister to a great king in a faraway country. Yep. Because we don't have this here. And he fell into disgrace. He must have given him the wrong advice or something. And as a punishment, the king ordered him to be shut up in a very high tower. And he was left there to perish. Well, his faithful wife came every evening up to the tower, and she would call to him, And she wanted to reassure him all the time that she would do whatever she possibly could to help him. So then he told her one night that when she came back the next night, she was to bring a long rope, a long piece of stout twine, a long piece of pack thread, a long piece of silk thread, and a beetle, and a little honey. Yeah? And she wondered about this. But she did as he requested, and the following night, she came back with all this equipment, and her husband directed her to attach this silk thread firmly to the beetle, and then to smear on its antenna some of the honey, to set it free on the wall with its head pointing up. And she did all this. And so this beetle started on its long journey up the wall, smelling always the honey. We all need a carrot, don't we? Yeah. And with this, desire for the honey, it slowly crept onward, and at last reaching this tower where the minister grabbed this beetle and got possession of the silk thread. Then he told his wife to tie the other end of the silk thread to the pack thread. And when he had drawn that up, he repeated the process with a stout twine, and finally then the rope. And the rest was easy. He got the rope, and he descended from the tower, and he made his escape. Easy. Now, in this body, this breathing is the silk thread. Observing the coming and going, we grasp the pack thread. And then we have the stout twine of our thoughts. And then finally the rope, the meditation. Through which we come to freedom. He escaped. Liberation, or enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it. You're free. Now, before the Buddha died, he named his successor. This successor understood in the same manner that the Buddha did. I mean, what life was about, who he was, and so on and so on. And his name was Mahakashapa. He's the one, when the Buddha gave this famous talk in which he didn't say a word. He just sat there and held this flower, and there was 1,500 monks sitting there, waiting for him to say something, or looking at the flower and wondering what's going on, and all of a sudden this Mahakashapa smiled. And there was this transmission, you see, outside the scriptures, as it is called. And Mahakashapa knew. No word, but he knew. And Buddha knew this, So he became the head of the Buddhist sect when the Buddha died. And after Mahakashapa, there came Ananda, and then after Ananda, there came another, and so on, all down through the centuries, where the patriarch, the successor, the teacher knew that one knew. And they called them patriarchs, towering men, Understanding the self. Not a recitation of something out of a scripture, be it the Vedas or be it the Bible or something that Buddha had written or whatever. And now we come to this Bodhidharma, as he is called in Japan. They call him Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma. He was the 28th patriarch in the line of succession. And this man, seeing that Buddhism was fading in India, and hearing that there were those in China who were interested, he made this trip from India to China, and the legend goes that it took him 9 years. In China, he met with the teachings of that time, which was Taoism. And they had in Taoism the use of a koan, what they call a koan, which is a problem to be observed. After one learns to meditate, one is given a problem. What is it that thus cometh, would be one, Yeah. It is a case, as it were. They call it a case presented by the teacher to the student. Yeah. And now, Buddhism and Taoism, though miles apart, were so compatible that they made a union through this Bodhidharma, or Bodhidharma, like a marriage sort of a thing. And now comes out of this marriage a revolution in the consciousness of man. Zen was born. Usually when somebody speaks of Zen, we put it into a Zen Buddhism. Mm-hmm. But Zen itself fits into all traditions. In the Catholic Church, there are quite a number of Benedictine monks using Zen. They're the Benedictine monks under Brother Standel Rast in this country back in, where is he, North Carolina? Somewhere back there. And then there is the Benedictine monks in Germany. They're in Frankfurt. And they have built a zendo, a sitting room for this monk that teaches Zen to the other monks. And the Jesuits use it. The Quakers use it. The Episcopalians use it. Yeah. It's kind of revolutionizing our way of looking at religion. Now, it is thought that this Bodhidharma, this 28th patriarch, was a Persian. He had blue eyes and red hair. And so they called him the red-haired barbarian. Or to them, the Chinese, he was a barbarian. Yeah. He had these piercing blue eyes. You know, look through you and look beyond you and look everywhere. You know, pierced the universe, pierced himself. And the drawings depicted of him show his eyes all out of proportion. You know. Yeah, there he is. There's Bodhidharma and his piercing eyes. He being the father, why, they can make much of him, you know. But his eyes must have been something. Anyway, after Bodhidharma had been there for a while, the Emperor Wei came to visit him. And there had been these stories going around about this man, and this emperor wanted to meet him. He wanted to question him. And this emperor was very interested, he thought, in religion. And so and then he meets Bodhidharma, and this emperor says, I have built many temples. I have been doing many virtuous deeds. I have given money so people could attend church, whatever they call it over there. Now, having done all this, what will be my reward? And Bodhidharma looked at him with these big eyes and said, no reward, none. Virtue is a byproduct of awareness, not something you do for a reason. No, said this emperor. You don't understand me. No, you know, that's always the way, isn't it? You don't get the point. You don't understand me. See, by virtuous deeds, I mean, I have built many temples. See? I have made ashrams for monks. You know. I have arranged for thousands of scholars to translate Buddhist scripture into Chinese, millions of dollars or whatever they called their money at that time, you know. I have given. What is going to be the result for me of all this giving? See, all this he had done for merit. Maybe to rise to the seventh heaven or something, or whatever he believed. And again, from Bodhidharma comes none. None. Now, the emperor didn't like this for a minute. So let's switch the subject a little bit. Well, he says, there must be something holy. Bodhidharma says, there is nothing holy. there is nothing sacred. There is nothing unholy. Holiness and unholiness are our mind attitudes, our prejudices, our beliefs, just the same as near and far and high and low. Everything is as it is. Things are simply as they are. Nothing is wrong and nothing is right. See, you can begin to see or begin to feel maybe the revolution in thinking that this brought about. Not only then, but to whoever meets it now. People meet something like that and they say, gee, I need to answer these questions myself. Or they close the door on them saying, well, I haven't got the time, or it's not of importance anyway, what difference does it make? All kinds of things. But anyway, this kind of an answer of there is nothing holy, there is nothing unholy, is certainly not the way we usually think, or the way we usually behave, or how we customarily act. No. Well, this emperor then says, well, if there is no merit, and if there's no reward in doing virtuous deeds, and nothing is sacred, and you're doing all this teaching, why did you make this long trip from India to China? Why? Why do you spend so much time teaching? And Bodhidharma looked at him for a minute and he says, the oak tree grows in the garden. It's become very famous. Or sometimes they say the cypress tree, or the tree in the garden. The oak tree grows in the garden. That's why. And this poor emperor's mind, is boggled, after all. Such crazy answers. There's nothing in it that he can grasp. How can you grasp a tree growing in the garden as in why? Huh? Who's going to understand this crazy talk? So he looks at this ferocious man again, not at all what he had expected in a teacher at all, He had expected a learned gentleman, with the mincing footsteps and the kindly demeanor and the soft-spoken words. And here's this red-haired, bearded, powerful giant to him, And finally, this Bodhidharma, this emperor looks at Bodhidharma, exasperated, don't know what to say. So he finally says, who are you? Who are you? And Bodhidharma says, sir, I do not know. The most terrific answer that shows he really knew. I do not know. And this little story or legend or whatever you want to call it, anecdote, is called Bodhidharma's Zen. It is woven in to the Zen tradition. It boils down to, from whence cometh you? Where do you come from? Who are you? What is this? Nothing sacred, nothing holy. People think that when Zen brings out this nothing holy, don't let that confuse you. There is the story of this teacher, this Roshi, who is going through the garden one morning early, and his monks are all trailing along behind him, and he's going along, and suddenly he stops, and he stoops over, and he picks up a snail, and he very carefully puts it in a tree. And he turns to these monks and says, for this was I born. Nothing holy, huh? Nothing sacred. A snail, holy. But what is this nothing holy then? See? This, and you know something? You have got the answer. You have got the answer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, within the Zen picture, then we have this Bodhidharma Zen, and we have Wei Ning Zen, and we have Hakuin Zen, and we have Rinzai Zen. Slightly different aspects, different questions to make the facets in this diamond of wisdom in you. There was this little monk at one time who asked his teacher if there were any Zen in the mountain nearby. And the teacher replied in the affirmative, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now this monk thinks he's going to find out something secret. What is this? So he asked again, what then is the Zen in the mountain? All set for this great answer. And this teacher says, bigger stones are big and smaller stones are small. Perfectly good answer. Huh? But not what he expected, not what we expect, but directly pointing to Zen. Bigger stones are big, and smaller stones are small. Yeah. So now this question of what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming to the West? And that's one of the most important questions in Zen. Monks are forever asking it. Bodhidharma arrived on the shores, on the southern shores of China around 520, 530, 525, somewhere around 520, let's say, A.D. But this question has absolutely nothing to do with his arrival in China. What is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? Now, you know that a great many scholars had come from India before him, before he did. And they were great scholars. What distinguished this particular man? His red hair? Well, hardly. What did he have for the people of China? You know, he went to a monastery called Shaolin. And this name is somewhat known to us who watched the TV series Kung Fu. Because a grasshopper, you know, was raised or reared or grew up at the Shaolin monastery. Yeah. Now, something that Bodhidharma, a little verse that Bodhidharma is supposed to have written, we don't know whether he did or not, but it goes like this. The original reason of my coming to this country was to transmit the law in order to save the confused. One flower with 5 petals is unfolded, and the bearing of fruit will come by itself. Yeah. So Bodhidharma, the 28th in India, the first in China, and after him, the 5 petals, there were 5 patriarchs after him that came after. And when it comes to the 5th, the 6th, they cut it off. No more patriarchs. That's all there was supposed to be. 5 petals that unfolded. The last of them was waning. And each one of these patriarchs contributed to the Zen viewpoint in China. Now, there is a divergence between Buddhism and Zen, Orthodox Buddhism and Zen Buddhism. Buddhism and Zen are both religions of freedom, of emancipation, of liberation from this wheel of life and death, as they call it. It is to become free from attachment to ourselves. You know, we think we're the most important thing that ever happened, and this may not necessarily be so. See? It is a freedom from our constant judging, from our constant discriminations and distinguishings and so on. And the ultimate aim, of course, is to release the spirit from its bondage, or the soul from its bondage, so it can act according to its own principles, if we can use that term. And now, the principles of spirit, non-attachment, non-discrimination, non-judgment, non-purpose, non-ego, this we come to perceive through meditation. So we could say non-attachment is a principle of the soul, of the spirit, and the soul should be free. And we are in our discipline to rid ourselves of, or at least make the attempt to, of the obstacles which our ignorance of the situation has acquired, and therefore these are the obstacles, so the soul cannot free itself. So because we have these obstacles, we begin little by little through non-attachment and so forth to understand, and the soul then becomes free. And so here comes this phrase now, throw them down. The Buddhist method now of presenting this is a story about a Brahmin, and his name was Blacknails. And he came to the Buddha, and he offered him 2 huge flowering trees. He had these pots with these huge trees, and he carried one in each hand, and he's struggling in with them, and the Buddha says something to him, he acknowledges that Blacknails is present, may have said hello or some such, or whatever it is that the Buddha said when somebody came in, And Blacknails responded in kind. And then the Buddha shouted at him, throw him down! And the Brahmin set the flowering tree that he held in his left hand in front of the Buddha on the floor. And then the Buddha called again, throw him down! So Blacknails dropped the other tree from the right hand. And then it came again, throw him down! And said this Brahmin, very confused now, I have nothing more to let go. What do you want me to do? And the Buddha said, I never told you to abandon your flowering plants. What I want you to do is to abandon the 6 objects of sense, that is, the 6 organs of sense, and your 6 consciousnesses. This is touch and hearing and so on, and what they have accumulated in you. Throw them down. When these are all abandoned and there remains nothing further to be abandoned, it is then that you are released from bondage. How simple, Yeah. That's the Buddhist way. Now we come to the Zen way of presenting the same thing. A monk asked Joshu, and Joshu was back in China, how is it when a man brings nothing with him? Now this little monk comes into this big teacher, this very renowned teacher, Joshu. And he's looking for information, and he thinks he has accomplished something, that he no longer has anything, that he has climbed up over all these obstacles and is ready to be free. How is it when a man brings nothing with him? Throw it away, was Joshu's immediate response. Throw it away. Well, what shall he throw down when he is not burdened at all? Well, if so, carry it along. Very direct and to the point. It makes you look in yourself rather than in your head plowing around, oh, isn't that a nice story? And wouldn't that be a nice thing to do, to be free of all the obstacles? But now you've got to answer this thing. It's a different situation. You've got to be with yourself, not just in your head. So, and Zen, of course, is more intellectual than it is emotional. Now, in your search for yourself in Zen, you will not find such phrases as the glory of God, or the love of God, or the divine bride, or the child of God, which the Christians use, and the Sufis use, and the Mohammedans use, and so on. No, you don't find that. Instead, you will find such phrases as not thinking of good, not thinking of evil, at this very moment. What is your original nature? Nothing good, nothing evil. What is your original nature? Yeah. And then, of course, Hakuin's famous case. What is the sound of one hand? Sound of two hands. Huh? What is the sound of one hand? Sound of one hand. The Zen monks are not concerned particularly with repentance and forgiveness and so on and so on. It is simply an intense, extreme, inward search to directly perceive yourself. And as you go through the stages and you have these perceptions of these various aspects of yourself, there comes such an awe and such a reverence and such compassion. Now, this intense seeking, which amounts to, holding a focus with the mind, just holding the mind. It's calling a halt to everything. You just hold the mind and hold it. And this is the driving force of the Zen consciousness. And it leads to the Zen experience. It is a holding within. And this holding in Japan is called kufu. And in China it is called kung fu. He gets his name. Interesting, huh? Yeah. There is this, with this holding within, it is a groping in the dark recesses of yourself. And if you were in Japan, they would say going toward the Buddha mind or finding the Buddha mind in yourself. Using that backdrop or background in which it was placed. In this country, gradually it will change because Zen changed when it moved from China to Japan around 11 and something, because here they bounced into the samurai. And this is another story, huh? What happens then to Zen? And so it's coming now to this country, and we don't have samurai, we don't have any that sort of thing, and we look askance at an Eastern tradition, so it will gradually change as it takes roots. And the problems then that will be presented gradually, maybe 25 years from now or something, or some of them are using them now, it would be through the Bible, the Christian Bible, huh? See, and in St. John, his prologue, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. But just simply, in the beginning was the Word. What is that Word? What is that Word? You've been reading it most of your life, There is a light, and every man that cometh into this world has this light. Every man. No man cometh into this world without the light. There you sit with it. Can you point to it? Can you grab it? Can you describe it? What is that light that you're sitting there with? St. Paul said, let that mind be in you, which was in Christ Jesus. So you call it Buddha mind, or you call it Christ mind. What difference, huh? What is that mind? What mind is this? What mind is listening? What mind is having this running commentary as you listen? What mind is this? Look, you have a mind. You have a mind? Do you have a mind? Huh? How is this then the mind that you have different than the Buddha mind or the Christ mind? How is it different? There was a man, a monk, who had been with his teacher for 17 years. And during this time he had had glimpses. He had fragmentary insights. And then one day, this teacher gave him a problem, this koan, and he no longer allowed him to be with the other monks. And the problem to be observed was to be and not to be. It is like wisteria leaning on a tree. And this monk opened his mouth. He was going to say something, and the teacher held up his hand and said, no, not so. And this went on for half a year. He would go sit, and when it came time for his confrontation, he'd open his mouth, and the teacher would say, no, not so. And one day he told his teacher, you know, my problem is like that of a dog that stands next to a pot of boiling meat. He can't lick it, however badly he wants to, nor can he go from it. He can't leave it, though he may wish to quit. You know. So it comes about, and it's about the way it works finally, that this problem is rather consuming, you know. It lives in one. It is as if it takes roots in you. And it then, the focus on it then, gets rid of the obstacles. You don't sit there niggling about, oh, I mustn't do this and I should do that. And it's just this problem. And it does the work. It's quite interesting, huh? And then this intuitive insight, this, what they call a noetic quality, leaps, you know, with an answer. And the answer is an experience. It is an experience. It is not something that you have reasoned out at all. It is not a conclusion, you know. It is all of a sudden as if you were on the other side of the fence in a new garden. You don't know how you got there, but you've never seen this garden before. You have never even imagined a garden like this before. It is so different. A perception, an insight, a realization of the essence of the actual nature. Your actual nature. What is your actual nature? Comes down to who are you? Who are you? Our minds are so fantastic. You know, the mind of man is really incredible. It's marvelous. Our minds keep us from this insight of ourselves. Our minds give us this insight of ourselves. What is this Buddha mind or Christ mind. What is it? Huh? It's sitting there. It is not far away. No. And yet, this mind is very cunning. We shouldn't trust it. No. It can create such questions which in the long run are only distractions. The mind is so subtle, it will deceive you. It can make you feel as if you were the greatest seeker that ever existed. You ask, what is God? Who created the world? What is my purpose here? What lessons am I learning? One must become very aware of the mind. Your mind, your freedom. But a mind is not something that's going to happen to somebody else. It is your potential. It is something waiting to happen to you. And it is not foreign to you. No. Many people, of course, enjoy abstract ideas and questions, and they play around with them. Like what is God, and how did he create man and woman, and why did he create man and woman, and, all that. They play around with these ideas. It's safe. Doesn't really touch you. Leave you out of the picture altogether. You're just playing with the ideas and thinking you're going someplace. And you're going round and round, huh? You can ask about God. You can ask about who created the world. But what about your mind? What about your mind? That's pretty close to home. What about your mind? You do have a mind. You do have a mind. Well, no, I'm not so sure. You do have a mind. Yeah. The mind can be filled with thousands of thoughts, and desires, and memories. And they're running around in this mind, and they're clashing, and they're conflicting, and they're drawing swords, and all sorts of things, huh? It's like a great war sometimes, or sometimes like the traffic in Paris and Rome at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Lots of noise. The mind covers lots of things. It is very big. Covers the world. Covers the universe. What's it doing in that little bitty head? Yeah. Mostly, it covers a witness. And this witness just waiting back there in the background. Our ordinary mind changes every moment. See? One moment it's angry, another moment it's sad, and another it's happy, and another unhappy. Change. Change is the name of this game, huh? Yeah. And so easily, it's like a greased pig, you don't even know, and all of a sudden this other thing is here, and then this other thing is here, and then this other thing is here. What happened to those old thoughts, huh? No problem change. You don't have any problem changing. No. Changing the mind is easy. The only thing is we're left to deal with the results therefrom. No. Now, if you can disidentify, even for a moment, so that you can observe this phenomena, you will begin gradually to perceive a silence, as it were, behind, or transcending all this clashing and conflicting and sword thrusting, huh? And then there rises, or comes a little more to the fore, this witness. Then when sadness comes, it's witnessed. When happiness comes, it is witnessed. When despair comes, it is witnessed. These things come and go. The witness is always the same, not touched by any of it. It just witnesses it. A mirror remains a mirror. Its reflections come and go. You are acquainted with the reflections. We are all acquainted with reflections. Now, what about the witness? How well do you know it? Yeah, this ungraspable, unattainable reality which we are. Okay. And now may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another. And I do thank you very much.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.